Hello everyone. So in this video we are going to see how to use the Log4J2 in your Spring Boot application. So if you're already working with the Spring Boot, you may be already aware of that Spring Boot use a logback as your default logging API. And on top of it, Spring Boot really don't add any kind of a dependencies or mandatory dependencies for the logging API, right? But probably like if you're already working with the initial log4j, the log4j2 comes up with really a good number of enhancements to the log4j. For example, asynchronous loggers as a part of the log4j2. It also supports the Java 8 lambda expressions, filtering. It has a good plugin architecture. There is a lot of improvement onto the concurrency side. It supports a number of different APIs. uh, there is a there is a way where it can automatically reload the configurations, and also you can set the custom log levels. These are kind of a high level of features which has been brought into the log4j2, and it's very common things that probably you may be want to use those features in your enterprise applications, and probably you will be building that onto the Spring Boot, right? So let's see how we are going to use log4j2 in your Spring Boot application. Let's look into those steps, right? First, as I said, so first thing we need to exclude the logback from our Spring Boot configuration. So when you include the Spring Boot starter, it automatically includes the the logback dependencies for you. So we are going to do two things. First, we are going to exclude the logback configurations, the dependencies from our application, and we are also going to add log4j2 starters in our application. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Maven's exclude feature to exclude the logging dependency, and we'll add the log4j2 in our application. Okay, so let's quickly add those one. So let's see what I have done so far. Okay, so these are the changes which I added to my application, right? So what I did is I basically excluded the Spring Boot starter logging from the Spring Boot starter. That's the first thing I did in order to exclude the log back configurations. And the second step what I did is I added the log4j2 configure the starter to my application. Now Spring Boot already has a built-in configurations for log4j2. Practically with these configuration you are almost done, apart from you are going to configure your log4j configurations using either log4j2 xml file or a properties file or whatever it is. But once you have added the log4j2 dependency in your class path and this external libraries, right, you can see all these log4j2 dependencies are there. So Spring Boot will automatically configure log4j2 auto configurations for you, right? So as I said, right, these are the default configuration. With these steps you should be good to use log4j2 for your application. Now probably that's not enough, right? Because you may want to configure the log4j2 behavior for your application, right? So there are a number of different ways which Spring Boot provides. As I said, Spring Boot is really flexible, so it provides a number of ways where you can configure your log4j2. For example, how do you want to output the logging? What should be the logging format? What kind of a logging? Whether you just want to have a debug, or you want to have the different kind of, for example, a warning or something like that, right? So there are, on a high level, there are four different ways how you can configure your log4j2 configuration. One, you can use an XML configuration. All you have to do, get into your resource folder, and you can always create a XML file which is going to be log4j2.xml file. Okay, and have all of your configuration into this. So Spring Boot, this is kind of the transparent integration that has been done by the Spring Boot in itself. So the moment it finds a log4j to XML in your class in your resource folder, it's automatically going to pick up all the configuration whatever you have defined, right? So for example, let's quickly add some sample configurations here. Okay, all right, so I have added some configurations. What I did is I just added some status, for example warning. I have added a appender console one. I added a log pattern here. This is the log pattern, and then I said, okay, what is my base package, which is going to be the com.java.dev journal, and the level I have set as a debug, and then these are the standard configuration. Means this is not specific to Spring Boot, but these are the standard Log4j2 configurations, right? So with that, you are all set to use your Spring Boot Log4j2 in your Spring Boot application. In order to test it, let's quickly add a controller to our application. Okay, so I'm going to add a, let's add a package, and then I'm going to add a controller. Okay, this is our package, and let's add our one control. Okay, log4j2 controller. All right, so I have added this controller. This is nothing, this is not a fancy controller. What I have done is I just created a REST controller and added a couple of logging statements here, right? Let's start our application quickly. Okay, application started now. Let's quickly see. Let's quickly open our endpoint on the browser. So we have this one greeting. We started, we got an hello, and let's see the console, right? You can see all these debug statements are being printed by log4j, right? This is one of the way doing it. Another way is if you don't want to use the log4j2 XML file, you can always use your application.property file, which provides some level of a control while you can configure your logging properties, right? There are another ways. For example, if you are more interested into the JSON format or YAML format, you can always create a file. This is going to be a log4j2.json file or log4j2.yaml file. Okay. If you want to go by this route, you have to make sure that you are adding those required dependencies in your class path. Otherwise, this won't work out, right? So that's the overall configurations, how you can enable Spring Boot to use log4j2 in place of the default logback. Thanks for watching this video.